Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Awaken Inner Wisdom. We're here to transform relationships to love and to life. So, we do that through unraveling the mind and tapping into our inner wisdom. So, if you're not familiar with my show and this is your first time, you may be asking, why are you wearing a crown? And the crown is such a beautiful symbol of tapping into our inner wisdom through our crown chakra. It actually has nothing to do with royalty in any sense. And it has all to do with tapping into our inner wisdom through our kingdoms, our queendoms, our power within, and our connection to source energy. So it's a very powerful symbol and one that might be misinterpreted by many. So I love that I get a lot of questions about why are you wearing the crown? And the power of really being anchored into our connection with source is so important, especially in today's times. First of all, I have to apologize. Last week, I was not here live. So if you tuned in and I wasn't here, you may have wondered what the heck happened. And it came forward that I should share a little bit about what was going on, because I feel in the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of energy happening right now. There's a lot of dark and light, and it doesn't mean necessarily good and bad, but it means that there's just a lot of energies at play. And there's a lot happening in realms that many of us are tuned into and many of us might not be tuned into. And so last week, Saturday, I was part of a campaign effort, and I was at a music festival. Honestly, I didn't think much of it. I thought, this is great. I'll be in community in a different way. There was lots of people at this music festival. It was, typical, like lots of music, lots of booths, lots of people, I guess there was a lot of drinking and a lot of other things too, which is not a huge deal. It's fun. It's community. But what I wasn't realizing, that I hadn't gone in and really protected myself energetically before attending. And it was a huge reminder to me about recognizing that there are energy vampires out there. There are forces at play. And I don't say it to scare anyone. It's not about fear. It's about just using discernment around your energy. Because as light workers, whatever you may refer to yourself, way showers, awakened beings, people on the journey, as we brighten our light, there will be forces that come to test us to dampen it. And that's exactly what happened. And I really wasn't quite aware of the intensity of what was happening to me. I knew that I felt quite drained, but I really didn't know that I was sort of being smothered, is probably the best way that I can explain it. I felt like there was a real heaviness that was enveloping me, and it felt like I wasn't connected to source. Okay, we know that that's not possible, that we are always connected to source, but sometimes there's things in our mind, sometimes there's things in the energies around us that disconnect us from source. And again, it's one of the reasons why this crown is so symbolic of keeping our crown chakras open, but also protecting our inner queendoms and kingdoms so that we're not being sucked by energy vampires. And it comes to mind to say that, of all my life experiences and some of the really crazy ones, if you've read my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, I talk about how I learned about psychic attacks. I talk about how my energy was being sucked. I talked about how people were on my ethereal life cord. I learned so many lessons and I got so many tools and ways to actually protect myself, but I didn't utilize them. And so now it's bringing it forward to share with you that if you are in this space of really opening yourself up, being vulnerable out in the world, shining your light brightly, that there's also some discernment that needs to be used to make sure that you're just really kind of helping yourself by not allowing some of the light suckers and the energies that be take you down. Because there is sort of this, I don't really like to use the word war, but this push-pull, and it's all about integrating light and dark within us. So it doesn't have to be something big and scary. It just needs to be something that we have a lot of awareness around. So it felt really important to bring that forward at the beginning of today's show. Because I was not live last week, we have so many questions and so many things to get through. So I'm going to do my very best to cover off on as many questions as I can. And if there's something that doesn't get covered today, we will bring it forward for next week. So don't fear, it will still be answered. And if you're on with me live, please ask any questions in the comments. You'll always get bumped to the front of the line with your question if you ask it here live. If you're watching on replay, of course, you can do the same thing. Put it in the comments. I'll check that and pull it into next week's show. You can also go to bethbell.me/question and ask your question there. It's a little bit more private. It doesn't show up in a live comments feed. So that's a great way to also get some reminders to the show. I'm so appreciative of you here live. I'm so appreciative of all the replays, and I can't wait to get started. So let's jump in to question number 1. How can I tell if a hit is real? In my troubled state, I just got a huge surge of energy that I'm supposed to start a podcast or something about the overprocessing and spending in the research industry. So this is a juicy one for many reasons, and I'm going to cover it on a couple of levels. And interestingly and ironically, there was another question that was asked from, and I know where these two people actually reside, and they are not even on the same continent. So sometimes what I see is some themes coming through. And I think this is a good theme for us to expand on. So in my troubled state, right? So there's a hit, but someone's feeling like, oh, but I'm a little bit wobbly in my connection. What does it really mean? I just got this huge surge of energy. I'm feeling it in my body for this idea. So I like to actually look to the external world. I know I talk all about tapping into your inner wisdom, and that is so important. But when we get that hit, oftentimes what's really helpful is if we look, but I don't mean like, oh my gosh, looking every moment. No, I just mean stay open to what the external world is going to reflect to you, because what's happening in the external world is a reflection of what's happening in the internal world. And so I look for 3 validation hits. It's really fun, actually. If you get like something and you're like, yeah, this is a great idea, and you look for those 3 hits in your external world, that it can be something super small. It can be that someone says, hey, you should start a podcast, like out of the blue, right? Completely unexpectedly. It might be that you get someone that comes into your email box that says, thinking of starting a podcast? Of course, it can be AI, right, that hears us talking about these things. But even then, take all of these little signs as, yes, green light, green light, green light. So I do look to the external world. But once I get those hits, then I go back inside. It's so important to go tune in inside, deep within, and say, okay, now how do I feel about this? Like, do I feel excitement? Do I feel scared? Do I feel it's a distraction? Do I feel that the timing is right for me? Like, how do I actually feel about it? And really get into that depth of it. And then I think it's partly about doing, but it's not like, oh, I got to put a whole to-do list together. It's like, okay, I'm going to be in that energy of how I feel with a really successful podcast talking about great topics and things that I feel are really needing to get out into the open. So feel into what does that energy feel like, and then start visualizing that. And that's going to bring a lot more energy from the universe, from spirit, to help you really move the process of this forward, as opposed to sort of the heavy lifting of the doing. I mean, look, I am the queen of many things, and doing a to-do list and putting together a whole strategy deck is something I love to do. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a great trait to have, but there's also something to be said for just letting spirit flow and letting it come to you. And how does it come to you? It comes to you when you vibrate in the energy of what it is that you want. So if it's a big podcast, a small podcast, a podcast at all that has listeners that are tuning in and getting your messages, sit in the energy of that and let it come to you. Otherwise, we're just doing. Now, I also hear you say that the podcast topic is about the overprocessing and spending in the research industry. And I really like this. Like, vibrationally, I go, yes. I think that is such an interesting topic. I don't know all the details of where you're coming from and all the experience that you're thinking to bring forward. But I do think that there's probably a lot to be exposed, actually, in the whole research industry. Coming from big pharma myself, I was in the industry for over 15 plus years. It was one of the most magnificent experiences of my life, and I learned so much through that career. But I also know that with any clinical trial, with anything actually, there's always a bias that can come into it. And when it comes to trials, it's, how good the trial is actually designed has a lot to do with the output of the trial. And I think with everything that's happened in the last couple of years, and I'm not suggesting this person is specific to any topics from the last couple of years specifically, but that there was a lot of things that were happening, a lot of funny business, a lot of stuff that was not from the highest level of science. So the over processing part, I don't know, I'm feeling into that too. And it's like, yeah, I just think there's a lot of money spent on this. And I have this big idea. I don't know why I'm sharing it in this question, but coming from big pharma, I know that the direct to consumer ad spends are enormous, and for lots of good reasons, but then also for reasons that I'm like, if, let's just say, for example, this is not the actual amount, you were spending 10 million on a direct to consumer advertisement for a particular drug. Wouldn't it be wonderful if there was also a requirement to spend 10 million on something that was natural, like a new way to think about eating, a new way to think about what you're drinking, a new way to think about how nutrition impacts you, so that we had a little bit more fair balance, because there is so much craziness out there. But that's a whole nother soapbox. So I don't mean to get so far into that, but I think there's a lot to be said for that. So I hope that the individual that asked this question does get all the hits, all the validation, all the support that you need to really get going with this podcast, because I think there's some super, super juicy nuggets there. So good luck to you. And if there's anything more I can help on that, please let me know. All right, let's jump to the next question. How do you know, and this one is similar, how do you know when to trust your intuition versus that you are projecting what you want to have happened and that something is real that's not real? Now, while there's some similarities to the first question, this one does have some different nuances, and it's about trusting that deeper hit, that intuition. Sometimes we get this, I'm going to call it fantasy. We get a fantasy about something, and that's what you're talking about. You're saying, this projecting what you want to have happen. So I think what's happened here is that you haven't actually tuned deeply inside to get the validation points of that, what you thought was an intuitive hit, and probably still is an intuitive hit. But sometimes the intuitive hits are indicators for us to tune in to see, like, do I want to go this way with this, or do I want to go this way with this? So I think it's really important that we do all of the steps of validation, right? So it's not just like, I got this great hit and boom, I'm going to go for it because I felt it. And it's like, we want to just use a little bit more discernment, because there's going to be stuff that you get coming at you from lots of different directions. And it doesn't always mean that you take action on all of them. And, we are the creator, because you're saying something is real that's not real. So we are the creator of our lives. And even if you took action on something that you felt was coming from your intuition and you went back later and you were like, a lot of that's just self-judgment, because sometimes our intuition does lead us into situations because we need to learn from them. And then afterwards, we want to judge ourselves and say, oh my gosh, how did I get myself there when my intuition steered me wrong? It's like, no, your intuition may not have steered you wrong. Your intuition may have needed to lead you to that place so that you could have the experience, so that you could learn from the experience. And sometimes it's as simple as not repeating that same idea or that same experience, right? That you go, oh, okay, I get it. I'm not going to do that again. And I'm going to have a little bit more discernment. So some really interesting nuances between questions number 1 and 2, but they both have to do with tapping into inner wisdom. They both have to do with feeling the energies of which situations from our external world and other people bring us, so that we know what's for our highest good and what we're calling in for our growth, because that's what it is. All of our relationships to love, to people, right, to life, they're all here for our growth, and we are the creator of all of them. So why not learn a little something from everyone? Okay, let's go on to the next question. Sometimes I feel that I am unhappy because I feel that I live in an almost constant state of judgment. If I am not judging myself or judging others, Then I feel that others are judging me. Do you have any suggestions on how to begin to address and overcome this trance-like compulsion? Well, yes. I think that self-judgment right now in the energies is on supercharge. I know that self-judgment is something we have all dealt with for lifetimes upon lifetimes, but right now, I feel that the underbelly of a lot of the programs and the social constructs are coming up with a vengeance almost. And so what's happening is if we don't have a spiritual toolbox, we don't know what to do with these things. And then we just listen to the monkey mind and we just believe a lot of the narrative that it's stating, and then we go deep into the rabbit hole. And that's exactly where we don't want to be. So the trance is you continuing to listen to the mind, whether it's your mind speaking to you about yourself or the mind speaking to you about what you think about other people. How many times have you had it where you thought like something was happening with that person and you're like, oh my gosh, they think X, Y, and Z. And then if you actually went and cleared it with them, they're like, yeah, I wasn't thinking that at all. It happens especially between men and women, right? There's like the woman has got all these ideas about what she thinks that her man is thinking about her or not thinking. And yet the man's just like very basically sitting there doing his thing. So I would clear with other people. If you really feel like someone's judging you, be careful how you do it though. If you feel someone's judging you, if you walk up to them and you come from a confrontational style, like I'm going to find out, and you say, hey, I feel like you're da 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 da, you're going to charge them and you're going to trigger them. And they're going to be like, whoa, like, where is that coming from? So I would recommend, depends upon your relationship with the person. I mean, if it's a complete stranger, it's a different story. I would recommend that you approach them in a very heartfelt way, recognizing that you might be a little too much in your mind. Walk up to them and say, hey, gosh, I'm feeling like something's happening here. Are you feeling that, or is it just me? Right? So you leave it very broad. You leave it very like, I'm feeling something. How are you feeling? Right? So that you're asking them, like, tell me a little bit more about how you're feeling. And I bet you, even if they are having some judgmental thoughts, it'll be like triggers them right out of their own trance, right? That's just human nature, is that monkey see, monkey do. I don't know why all the monkey analogies, but we are looking to other people and seeing if we're validated or not, which that's not what we want to be doing. It really doesn't matter what's happening. Stay cognizant of what's happening in the external world, but don't allow the external world to rule your mindset, to rule your emotions, to rule your validation. That is not where we want to be. We want to be in the energy of, I'm in my queendom, I'm in my kingdom, I am here and I am connected, and I want to project this light and love out into the world, right? So if you are feeling really judgmental of other people, drop into your heart and go there and say, wow, if I were wearing a crown, right? If I were wearing a crown, how would I be? And I mean a crown, again, not from, royalty standpoint necessarily, but from a level of, I'm in my highest self. How would I act? What would I say? How would I feel? And what would I want the other person to feel? So as soon as you start getting that judgmental thought, be like, ooh, wait, put it back onto you, right? Because that is everything as we know. I mean, this is in Psychology 101. People are a mirror. So if there's something you're judging about someone else, it's actually a judgment on you, right? You're pointing at someone else, there's more fingers pointing back at you than pointing at someone. So really important to feel into that and stop yourself from the trance as soon as it starts, and then you don't even have to get into the trance-like state. The fact that you're bringing up the question means that you have awareness around this. So I love that. I love that you are really wanting to shift this process in your mind and recognize that it's your mind. It's not your heart. It's not your awareness. It's not who you really are. It's the character that you're playing on TV that's trying to make a differentiation between you and someone else. But when we start going into the heart and we go, okay, I am love. They are love. We start to shift things. And in fact, do this even with strangers. When you're out in public, here's just a thought, an idea, and you see someone and you're like, I want to judge them for X, Y, or Z. So, ooh, okay, number one, what is it about me that they're showing me? Self-hatred, self-judgment, like what is it specifically that reflection is for me? And number two, what would happen if I just shot light at them and said, wow, I'm just going to love them for exactly who they are and how they're expressing themselves. And then third, just observe. Observe if not that it has to, but just observe if you really are in your heart space and you throw that out there, how does that person's behavior change? Maybe it's something small, like a slight mannerism change, or maybe they smile out of the blue. Just watch and have fun with it. And then I think you'll start to notice the more you practice this, the more fun it is to see how your energy goes out there and right and swirls and does have an impact. We know this from basics. Like you're walking down the street and you smile at someone and they're grumpy or they're not, just they see your smile and it's like infectious and they just like, oh, why is that? Well, yes, there's the visual aspect of it, but there's also the energy of it. It's the being seen part of it. So let's see other people, not for their flaws, but let's see them for their love and their light. And let's have some empathy and some kindness around everyone has some level of suffering. Yes, there are times when we're just 100% in our blissful state, but there's a lot of narratives running in the background for most people. So unless you're Buddha or Gandhi, Krishna or Jesus, some of the enlightened masters that have roamed the earth, you may still be a little bit in your mind. So let's just help our brothers and sisters to get out of the mind and into the heart and to feel seen, heard, and loved. Hopefully that helps you get out of your trance. All right, let's go on to the next question. And I'm going to just quick check here because sometimes I can't see the screen with the questions. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. And if you have any questions, anyone watching live, please put them in the comments below. When it comes to long-term relationships, when it comes to long-term relationships, what is the difference between standing up for ourselves to get what we want and giving grace when we are stepped on? It seems like such a gray area. How do we navigate this? One day I feel like I should say something because I am hurt. And then the next moment, I think I should give grace. How do I know the difference? I think you've actually got a good handle on this because you're bringing forward this awareness about knowing, about knowing that like I'm hurt. And then the next moment I should actually be stepping out of that. And I think that's the key point here is that if we wallow in the hurt that someone else has made us feel, if we actually feel it and release it and let it go, then there's not a whole lot that you have to do about it, right? It's like, and that's kind of the catch and release, catch and release, catch and release that we're being asked to practice right now. It doesn't mean that we let people walk all over us. Sometimes we just have to say to them, that hurt me. When you said that, that hurt me. And leave it at that. You don't have to go into all the details. Just let them know, hey, that made an imprint on me. That had an impact on me. And again, if you can come from a place of heart-centered love within yourself, and I know that's hard at times when people are like really mean and they say things, they do things, like if someone's just yelled at you, you want to yell back a lot of times. It's not so easy to just be like, oh, I am love, but it can be easy if you practice. And sometimes you don't have to say anything because all you need to do is walk up to that person, get close to them, take a deep breath for yourself first, anchor in, feel the love within yourself and walk up to that person and perhaps just look in their eyes. It depends on who they are and what your situation is, but sometimes just looking in their eyes can stop them to just reflect on, oh, wow, gosh, I just got a little too much for that person. And you didn't even have to say anything. Sometimes it's just going, That person's clearly going through something, and you just walk up to them, maybe touch their hand, maybe touch their shoulder. Something that just is an act of kindness, an act of, I see you. When we see other people, it helps them to be able to see us. And when we see each other, the image that comes to mind, if you're familiar with any of the Burning Man um, sculptures, there's this beautiful sculpture that they did many years ago now, where there was these two very large wire humans back to back, obviously in a disagreement, but inside the sculpture. So the big two humans back to back, right? Inside that sculpture, right next to each other, was their inner child, looking to connect and hold hands. So we're always just unraveling our own programs, our own ideas, our own beliefs about life and love and what we think is right and wrong. And once we start to just release and let go and just really it's not about like that you don't care, but that you care less. You care less so that you can love more. Does that make sense? You care less, meaning you're like, yeah, let the mind go do its thing. And you love more and you come from the heart. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. And let's move on to the next question. I'm going to check the live chat as well. Always some good stuff that comes through on the live shows. And I so appreciate all of the questions that you're submitting in advance. Okay, here's a good one. My niece just graduated from high school. She and I have a good relationship. I videoed everything to try and capture the moment and document for her and her parents. However, she looked at me afterwards and said, "Why do you have to video every detail of my life? They take up too much space, and I'm probably going to delete them anyway." I was crushed and I wasn't sure what to do next. Should I say something to clear it? A couple of things come to mind. First of all, I totally understand. I get that would be a little bit crushing. Also, what comes to say is that high school graduation, 18 years old, teenagers, oh my goodness, unpredictable emotionally. They don't oftentimes have a toolbox. They don't have a toolbox for how do I navigate my emotions? How do I navigate? Like it could be that they're nervous. It could be that they're embarrassed about something else. It could be that they're just embarrassed by you being there and paying so much attention to them. It could be a million things. The thing about the teenage mind is that it is so unpredictable. In fact, this is a story that comes to mind. It's actually not my story, but a dear friend of mine shared with me so graciously, because I know it was a difficult story for her, that when she took her child to college and was dropping them off and helping them move in and all this stuff, right towards the end, her child flipped her off and gave her like some really harsh words. Can you imagine? You just raised this child for 18 plus years and you're dropping them off at a really magnificent point in their life. And suddenly they're, super annoyed and flipping you off. And that story comes to mind to share because it's so much about letting them just express themselves in the emotion and us as adults not taking it personal. Right. So yes, it may not be inappropriate. And yes, your first instinct as a parent may be to reprimand them, do not talk to me like that, or don't say that, or any of those kinds of things that come forward for us. But sometimes we just need to allow them to diffuse themselves and give them some grace and let them know that we love them and just step away and recognize, there's a lot of other things happening in this teenager's mind that I'm not here to transform for them in this moment. And sometimes silence, and I don't mean like from a negative, like I'm going to give you the silent treatment. I mean more from like just let me just go in here and let me not take it so personal. Let me not follow the storylines of why they said that, what that means, I don't feel respected. I don't feel honored. I don't feel, I'm just trying to do something good. Like staying out of all of that. That's all victim, but honoring that, hey, gosh, that kind of crushed me. That made me feel bad. And then just letting yourself diffuse it for yourself. I think if you really feel and your relationship is such that you can clear it with them, feel free to do so, but maybe wait a few days. And maybe in a few days, it can come out as a little bit more of a lighthearted comment like, hey, when you said that to me, that really crushed me. It took me a couple days to get over it, but I get it, or I didn't get it, or I hope you don't say that to me again because it really just tweaked my energy and made me feel like, yeah, like I shouldn't be there, or whatever emotion it is that comes forward. So then you can still clear it with them, but in a little bit more lighthearted way, because otherwise teenagers, they can't handle all these adult emotions sometimes. I'm not saying that we shouldn't put them in a situation where they have to, because yeah, sometimes they have to. But let's just have a little bit more, I don't know, empathy maybe towards what they're going through. Think back to all the insecurities you may have had when you were, making this huge life transition. There's a lot of unknowns. So we just need to give them a little bit more grace and go into our own stuff. Like, what is it for me that this interaction happened? Okay, let's see here. I think we've got several more questions coming up, and I just want to keep checking in, making sure that we get everything on the lives. Okay. A person once suggested to me that in order to make an affirmation, which for me became empty when I overused them, more effective and immediately helpful is to try flipping it around. Instead, saying, for instance, I am peaceful, say to myself, peaceful am I. This definitely works for me, and I am not sure why. Any insights on this? Well, I think if it works for you, great. Keep switching it around. I think that it's a little bit of a mind mess that we're working with here. I think that I understand the suggestion. I think it can be a really good one. And sometimes I think just shifting things shifts something in your brain, because when you're sort of wired to do something the same way, that when you, like, for example, you drive the same way home every day. If you switch it up and you drive a different way, your brain has to kind of be engaged to think differently as opposed to be on autopilot. So there's a sort of a sense of hypnosis that happens in our everyday life with like very common things, the things that we do in routine. And so if you're doing a lot of affirmations, which it sounds like this is the situation, that the affirmation became too much of a routine. So I would say that's why switching up the language helped you more than anything. But what comes to me is something more than that. And in order to make affirmations effective, a lot of people say the words, say the words, say the words, say the words. But if there's not the emotion behind what it is that you are really wanting to feel, because we're saying affirmations because we want to have a positive statement, a positive feeling, a positive outlook, a positive view of something. But ultimately, we just want to feel positive, don't we? Isn't that the whole point? We want to feel happy. We want to feel joyful. And so I think cultivating that feeling within you is the most important thing. However you want to say the words, you want to scramble them, left and right and up and down and all around, you can. It's really about how you feel when you say them. So I like that you're kind of mixing it up a little bit. And I think that that can have value. And it certainly did for you because you said it worked. But I would stay even more focused on the feeling of what you want from it and get your other senses involved. Sometimes affirmations, I think they fall a little flat because we want the visual stimulation, like visualizing it. We want, sometimes we can bring in the scent of something. That's really helpful. Really bringing in all your senses. That's what's going to bring something to you, whether it's an emotion or it's an actual object or a thing that you desire. So stick into the real anchoredness of what the purpose behind your affirmation is. What is your real why? Not so much just that you're saying an affirmation. All right, but great question. Okay, let's jump into another question. I'm a healer and have been doing this work for 15 plus years. Right now, the energies are really heavy, and a lot of people call me and write me for advice and healing energy. Since it is my calling to assist humanity, I find ways to ground myself and clear. Now, I'm feeling like I need to create hard boundaries and take a break from everyone. However, this is my profession and I don't want to leave anyone hanging. Thoughts? Yeah, a lot of thoughts. We're not here, and I know you know this as a healer, but we are not here to heal anyone. We are here to know that we are healed and whole. And as we recognize that energy within ourselves and we connect into source and we're in that vertical column of light and love, the energy and the source of which creates worlds that we are part of, we're not separate from. When you're lined up to that in your vertical column, then you can take that grid work and go out. You can go horizontal with that and cover a huge area with your energy alone. And so when we're in that sacred space and we're not allowing things from the external world to take us down, people's stories, people's energy, and we're doing the protection that I talked about at the beginning of the show, where we're not getting the energetic vampires that are poking into our auric fields, then that's really the place that we can be of greatest service. And it may or may not mean that you take someone's phone calls. It may be that you have a real anchored way of giving them the energy that they need for support without losing yours, right? Because when we're vertical and we go horizontal in the matrix, we don't lose energy because we just are recycling it. We're recycling it and we're casting it out in such a beautiful way to other people that they're able to feel that simply by being in our presence. And what also is coming to me is that there's times when we get too caught up in the words. When we get too caught up in the words, we're too caught up in the stories. When we're too caught up in the stories, we're too caught up in the emotions and feeling their emotions. So it seems like it's all an up-leveling for you that's taking you to another place of protection, discernment. And I say that from the lightest, brightest place. I don't mean that there's, nefarious energies. I just mean that we've all got to continue to expand our light and our love. I mean, when you think about Amma, the hugging saint, or you think about Muji, you think about some of these people that just sitting in their presence raises your vibration. And that's really the point for all of us, that we are raising our vibration, tapping into our inner wisdom that is connected and lined up to source so that we can also help our brothers and sisters in humanity. But we're not here to heal them. We're here to show them a way. We're here to show them what that looks like and feels like to be in the strength of that energy, but not giving ourselves, not trying to give something to someone at the depletion of our own. And there's a real nuance and a real skill to that I think as soon as we get one level of it, we're next level, right? Something else happens. So yeah, as healers, again, I say that word very lightly because we're only here to heal ourselves back to the wholeness that we have always been. It's just all of the constructs of the mind that we're here to unravel that gets us back to that knowing that, I am perfect and whole exactly where I'm at. And when the mind gets out of the way and the heart just anchors in and we can clear ourselves and our chakras and our energy field, we're in that beautiful space and place where we are of greatest service to humanity. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. We're kind of running down to the hour. All right. I'm about to transition my job and where I'm living. There's so many unknowns, and I'm trying to figure out the desperate need for time off to recoup mentally, physically, and emotionally. I'm trusting that somehow the universe will deliver what I need since I have no money. I'm surprisingly calm, but as the days in the reality gets closer of moving out of my place, I question myself a little, and I don't like that feeling. Tuning into the energy of this question, a couple of things are coming to mind for me. So sometimes when I tune into a question, it's very specific to the person asking it, and sometimes it's for someone else who's also in the field and needs some additional support and advice. So if I'm answering your question and it doesn't feel like it's 100% on for you, it might be because there's someone else that needs additional insights. So always take what feels right for you and leave the rest, because these questions do go out to everyone in the field. What's coming to me is that you are very disembodied from the actual reality of what's happening. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that a lot of us, when we're going through very stressful times, we disassociate with the emotions, because getting into the emotions wouldn't help us stay in control of the situation. And so we're constantly in this balance of like, oh, I got to stay in control, because if I lose control, like that's not going to help me. If I have to move, I can't be a mess. I have to be able to pack my boxes. If I'm transitioning to a new job, I can't walk in on my first day and be a nutcase, just using words. I don't mean that legitimately, but that's sometimes how we feel, right? The fear of walking into a new job and then just like not being in our power. And what feels like what's coming is that if you don't find a way to let go of all of this control, spirit is going to wrap you and take you into that place. Again, don't be scared of that. That's not something to be scared of. It's that I would do some exercises that allow you to really feel into this. As you're moving out of your place, I would carve out some time that you're going to just literally sit and cry about it. Assuming that you are attached in some way to your place, and I don't mean like bad attachment. I just mean like you there's an element of you is like, I love my place and this is going to be crazy to leave my place. I don't, either you don't know where you're going, or even if you do know where you're going, that there's a relationship that we build with places, that you find some time, you make some time. I know it can get crazy when we're moving, and sometimes it comes unexpectedly. So if it does come unexpectedly, take it, that you sit and you cry, that you absolutely cry it out. If you have a candle, I would light a candle, and I would allow yourself to think about all the beautiful things that you love about this place or this space or this community, and mourn it in that moment. As long as you can take, as long as what's ever realistic for you, and just feel the intensity of leaving it. Because I think sometimes, we just bolt out of a place because we've got to get all our stuff packed and we got to get it out. And we want to get on to the next, that we don't actually have this own ceremonial experience with ourselves. Something that comes to mind to share is that many, many years ago, when I was going through a divorce, I had moved out and moved into an apartment, and I had an opportunity to come back to take care of the dog that I shared with my husband at the time, but ex-husband. And I was a little bit hesitant about, having to go back into the energy, because there was a lot of memories in the house, good memories and not so good memories, but there was probably more good memories. So I went back to the house because of my dog. And what I realized is that it gave me such an opportunity to feel into the emotions around all the good memories, and all the good memories that I would cherish, as opposed to wallow in feeling like, oh, those aren't going to happen again. I mean, I'm sure those thoughts came up. It's been so long now that I don't remember exactly the emotions or the situations, but or the memories that came forward. But I just was so thankful that I had that opportunity to just be in the home and be with the energy of the home. Sometimes we don't think about our homes as having that energy, but it does. It holds our spirit, it holds a space, it holds a place, it holds support for us. And when we leave it, honoring all that it's done for us is such a beautiful experience. So please take that time to do that in your transition. And I would do the same thing for your work, whatever it is that you're transitioning from. Take the time to mourn that at whatever level you're leaving it. I don't know. Before you try to jump right into, okay, well, I'm going to do something this, or let me figure out what I'm going to do next. We miss the step of thanking and having the gratitude for everything that was learned from the experience that's coming to a close. But when we sit with it and we really feel into it and we really allow ourselves to be grateful for all that it brought, even if it's maybe a not so great ending, in some cases, I'm not getting this for this case, but some cases, you might get fired or you're let go or it's unexpected. And it's still, and even then more important probably, to feel into the energies of the gratefulness and the gratefulness of the person that you worked for or the people you worked with, that you really sit in all the beauty of that, because that can bring more of what you really want in the next position. And unfortunately, sometimes our mind just gets us into like all the bad things. And well, good thing that I don't have that, because whatever that list is, that's okay too. You can release some anger, release some emotion around that. But the point is to get into the good stuff, and to get into the good feeling things, so that we attract more of that in the next step. And if you don't know what that next step is, you don't know what the next job or next company is, or next career move is, sit in the uncertainty of it with grace and with trust, and feel. So again, I'm going to come back to, there's this disembodiment energy that keeps coming to me. And if we don't get into the embodiment of, on a cellular level, how we're feeling about something, we're going to take that into the next phase of our life. And it never just randomly dissipates on its own. It just doesn't. This is not how it works, because we can only release things through feeling them. And feeling them with the intention of release is a lot of times what people fear, but it's actually what is so great. People don't, I don't want to go back into that. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to be there. I don't want to emotionally discharge. But you want to, and you want to go in and you want to say, what's there? I love journaling for this, because it really just allows the pen to flow. If that doesn't feel right for you, sit in meditation. And if you can't quiet your mind, then get the pen out, start writing exactly the thoughts that are coming through your mind, because that's the anxiety, that's the unknown and the uncertainty that can start to get really heavy. And that creates depression. Ultimately, I'm not saying you're depressed, and I'm not saying this is your situation, but I'm saying this is what it can result in if we don't sit with that heavier energy. Because we're constantly, let me be positive. Let me be optimistic. Yes, you're always going to have that energy, and that's going to be there. But you got to still get into what the emotion is that your body's experiencing based on the situation that's happening to you. So please don't skip that step. So important. Thank you for asking that question. I think a lot of people are in transition right now, and a lot of people can benefit from really getting down into it. And at the same time, knowing that your light is still shining brightly and your connection is still there. Okay, I've got so many more questions. Some of these I'm going to have to put to next week, but let's try to get one more in here. I care a lot about people and like for everyone to be happy, especially in social circles. I know I don't need to coordinate and manage, but I can't help myself. Do I find more peace within myself and not allow all my desire to make everyone else happy? How do I find more peace within myself and not allow all my desire to make everyone else happy, to cause me anxiety? I think this is oftentimes something that mothers experience because you spend so much of that early part of the child's life thinking about all the things you need to do to take care of them, which is a great thing and it requires a huge skill set. And then there's a point where, you really have to let go of your child's hand when they're trying to walk. Because if you keep holding their hand, you're controlling where they go and they don't get to explore. So when a child is like, first getting their first steps, it's like that's how they learn, is through their own experience. And if, as I said, you hold their hand the whole time, then you're leading and guiding them. And then you're not letting them be who they are. So I get that same analogy, and I'm not suggesting you're a mother, you may or may not be, but it's that mother energy. And the mother energy also has to do with a need to feel validated. Like I feel validated that I'm here because I'm helping. I feel validated because I'm here thinking about everybody else. And it's an interesting flip that we need to do where we go, no, I need to validate myself and be in my own presence and my own calmness and my own peace. And that is what allows everyone else to express who they are, be in their own situation, and let other people have their own, experiences with them. Otherwise, we're trying to hold the toddler's hand and control everything that's happening. So it's letting go of that control of people, places, and things and how they coordinate, and letting the energy of that be fun. Yeah, maybe somebody's going to say something that's really out there and you're like, oh no, they're going to be misunderstood or whatever that might be. But it's not your responsibility. The only responsibility you have is to observe yourself and to observe how others' behavior impacts yourself. And that's where all the juicy lessons are. Otherwise, it's just control, and it's the mind thinking that there is a right way and a wrong way. And it's getting out of all of that energy and just saying, gosh, I love all these people for whatever it is that they need to do to express themselves. You may not agree with it, and you may not, think that it's the right thing to do. But when we can get out of the ideas of right and wrong and just let it be, that's where the peace comes. Because your question was around, how do I find peace within myself? Yeah, it's just allowing yourself to be you and allowing everyone else to be them and letting the cards fall wherever they may. All right. I so appreciate everyone. I appreciate the questions you've submitted. There's so many resources over at bethbell.me. If you want to ask a question and you want it more privately, please go to bethbell.me/question. There's the Awakening and Healing Handbook. It's jam-packed with so many tips, tools, techniques, and modalities to help you build your spiritual toolbox. I guarantee there's something in there for everyone, no matter where you are on your journey. There's also the psychedelic resource guide. So lots of great tips in there if you're at all considering the possibility of spiritual medicines, or you just know someone else who is and you're just a little bit curious and you want a little bit more insight. There's also the herpes handbook. Yes, I know it's like, why are you talking about herpes? There's so many juicy nuggets in there. And ultimately, it is about herpes specifically, but there's also the viruses of the mind that we really need to work through. So if you're at all inspired, the herpes handbook is jam-packed with some really great nuggets and so much more. Get your state of the heart assessment at bethbell.me. There's a really short assessment, but it's jam-packed with some intricate questions that, based on your personal responses, will send you back an assessment that's specific to where your state of the heart is. And if you're still with me on this, I would love to know, where is your state of the heart according to you right now? Put in the comments the color of your heart. I would love, if it's a red heart or a purple heart or a blue heart, an orange heart. We've got some really great comments from people from other shows about where they're at in their heart space. So I would love to hear about that. I would love for you to do the assessment and get your personalized results. And you can also sign up for the Awaken Inner Wisdom community. Apply for that. It's a deeper dive into all things spiritual, all things awakening, expanded consciousness. I'd love to hear from you on that. And as always, I love your participation here. Sundays, 11 a.m. We're live, and I would love to see you here next week. And if you're watching on replay, thank you. A thumbs up, like, and subscribe is always helpful. So until next week, wishing you only bliss and love on life's journey. Namaste.